Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another SmackDown review. Alright, SmackDown tonight. Wasn't very promising. From the rip, I'm just gonna give it a 4 out of 10. I mean, it was crazy. You know, I'm old school wrestler. I'm back there with the WWF, and then just before Triple H or before Vince McMahon sold it to TKO. I mean, I was a big fan. There were storylines. You followed what was going on and everything like that and stuff. But nowadays with Triple H, there's no storylines. Everything is predictable and stuff. And it's just crazy. We're not getting good content. We're not getting good wrestling. We're not getting new people. He's not promoting anybody. It's just the same old, same old, same old, same old. Week in, week out, month, and everything, stuff like that. Now, CM Punk is champion again and stuff, and just on a different brand. And it's going to be with Cody Rhodes, but instead of the Roman Reigns. So, and they're saying the same thing. So the promos are coming out the same way and stuff. But anyway, um, let's get to the show. Nick Aldis comes out and he starts talking about what happened between him and Gunther and stuff. And then he's back now, and then now he calls out CM Punk, you know, um, to the ring. And then CM Punk comes out and he's saying that he will defend the title, every week and stuff. So he's going to have that, on call thing, saying that, hey, look who wants to come out and everything, open challenge match and stuff. So he's going to start doing an open challenge with the world title, I guess. We'll see how long that lasts because last time he was champion, we didn't see much in any matches from him, at least on television. And then he starts calling out, names and stuff like that, backstage and everything. And then he says, Sami Zayn and everything. He told said Sami Zayn will get his rematch and everything. And then he says he's not worried about Gunther, because Gunther can try to come and take the title, but he's not worried about Gunther. He'll just beat him too and stuff. And then as he's talking and everything, he's starting to name other wrestlers and stuff like that. And then out comes Cody Rhodes, and then Cody Rhodes, comes out. He sees CM Punk's eye, and he starts looking at it and stuff like that. And then they start talking about when Cody had a big shiner on his eye, and so they're comparing eye shiners and stuff like that. And then they're talking about, you know, Cody's talking about, the championship opportunities, and that they've built up to, where they're at and everything for this title. I'm like, well, where did they build that up at? He just won the title just a couple of days ago and stuff. And then CM Punk, tells Cody that they can't run away from, what's in front of them. More or less what Seth Rollins said to Roman Reigns a few weeks ago. So it's basically based on the same thing that they talked about. Nothing, nothing creative, nothing. And then Cody, tells him that, SummerSlam, would be a place where they can meet and stuff. And so, I'm assuming that, CM Punk, says, okay. Then they shake hands and then they embrace. I'm just sick and tired of all the love that they keep giving each other and stuff like that. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. Just doesn't make any sense. Then you got Jade, Cargill, and Meechin. Jade's talking about that she's not going to be responsible, for what happens to Alexa Bliss on her cause when Charlotte cost, Jade a match and stuff. So she said that she's going to take all her frustration and revenge out on Alexa Bliss later on tonight. Then we get the match with Finn Balor and Tama Tunga. The match is okay, I guess. Tama Tunga, you remember last week, he jumped on Finn Balor saying that he's going to, make things right that he didn't do right. And he was going to start with Finn Balor. But then again, it just didn't happen. Finn Balor hit him with the coup de grace and stuff. And Tama Tunga loses, Finn Balor wins. So Tama Tunga, all he did is just came out there and got jobbed out. Even though he had Tala Tunga with him, it just didn't matter. Finn Balor wins the match. Then we get a little Kathy is with Carmelo Hayes, and then Carmelo Hayes is talking about, this is his moment, to face Trick Williams and stuff like that. and that if he beats Trick Williams, then he can go on and face him for the title, and then win the title when the next time he faces him. And then we got War Raiders, telling our truth, to go talk to Nick Aldis, about facing them, for the SmackDown tag team titles. Then Jacob and Jimmy come out and they're asking our truth, has he seen Royce Keys? And our truth tells him that he doesn't know Royce Keys. He said he doesn't know him. And then Damian Priest comes up, and then they ask him, has he seen Royce Keys? And he said, yeah, he's seen him in the back somewhere and stuff. And then he goes on to tell, Damian Priest goes on to tell our truth, hey, look, Royce Keys, stay out of that. It's not their problem, it's not their business and stuff. And then they walk on and leave. Then we got Nick Aldis on the phone with talking to Sami Zayn, saying that he knows that Sami Zayn is on the middle break and stuff and everything. And then Gunther comes and interrupts him on the phone, and Gunther tells Nick Aldis, that he belongs, in the championship match and stuff, and that he's not, um, that he has to the end of the show, to make things right and stuff, and then he walks off. As before he did that, before he walks off, he tells Nick Aldis that he'll face CM Punk, he'll face Cody Rhodes, he'll face both of them. And I'm thinking that's what that match is going to end up being anyway. When they fight for the title, it's going to be a triple threat. I can promise you that's what's going to happen. Then we get backstage. You got Jimmy, well, not backstage, but in the ring. Jimmy's in the ring and he calls out Solo Sikoa, and Solo doesn't come out. Royce Keys comes out. And Royce Keys tells Jimmy, that he keeps, mentioning him, his name, and he says that he's put his name in his mouth, a couple of times. And Jimmy says, they're here, to handle, OTC business, for the bloodline, and then he says, then Royce Keys tells Jimmy, hey, look, the OTC is not here, and I guess he said it in a smart way. And then Jacob Fatu, grabs the mic and stuff, because Jimmy is saying some crazy stuff, you know, um, to Royce Keys, and then Jacob grabs the mic and he says, Royce, me and you were here, and that they're tight, you know, and he says, well, let's keep it that way. And then Jacob goes on to say, you can say anything else about anyone, but when it comes to the OTC, Jacob says, please don't go there, or else there'll be some repercussion and stuff. So Jimmy's basically telling, Royce Keys, hey, keep his mind, keep his mind and stuff. And then Jimmy, goes on and tells Royce Keys that, he's not family, it's, all bloodline stuff. And then Royce Keys goes on and talking about, hey, look, he doesn't have any family, that him and Jacob were friends, for 14 years and everything. And he's not going to let anything bad happen to Jacob. They've been together there. They're like brothers and stuff. He said blood isn't, doesn't make you always family and stuff, And he's kind of right. I mean, if you got a, best friend, but this is bloodline stuff that we're talking about, And then Jimmy goes on and say, hey, look, there's a line and everything, don't cross it. And so Royce Keys says, okay, I see the line, but he stepped over the line. Now there's air and opportunity and stuff. And then Jimmy goes on and he tries to sneak a punch in on Royce Keys, and Royce Keys stops him and he drops um, Jimmy Uso over the top rope and stuff. So we get the match between Royce Keys and Jimmy Uso. And as the match goes on and everything, it's pretty good, match, but there's more I can go into it and everything and stuff like that, as far as Jimmy and stuff like that. And now that Jimmy did beat Royce Keys and stuff, does that set Jimmy up for any major title or anything like that? But anyway, during the match, Solo comes out and he tries to sneak attack, Jimmy. and everything. And then when he tries to, do that with Jimmy, Jacob comes out and everything. And then Jacob and Solo, they brawl and stuff, and they fight each other. And then Royce Keys, instead of paying attention in the match, Jimmy spears him for the pin, 1, 2, 3. And then Jacob throws Solo into the ring. He gets a chair and he puts it between Solo's head, and he's gonna run and he's gonna bounce him off the ring apron, in the corner of the ring and stuff. But he stops. He gets in Solo's face and he says, "Hey, look, you need to come to Raw next week and talk to the OTC. OTC wants to see you face to face. If you don't show up, there's gonna be some repercussions and stuff." So, and then left it like that. Then we get a film with Sami Zayn going off about what happened to him, when losing the title after having it for only 9 days and stuff like that. He's talking about CM Punk, just come in, from out of nowhere and stuff. He's been gone for months and everything. He comes in, gets a title shot, and now Sami Zayn lost, and Sami is pissed about it and stuff. So we'll see what happens with that and everything. And then we got Kathy, with CM Punk, and he's talking about, Sami Zayn and everything, about with Gunther and stuff like that. And then Candice LeRae, comes out with Johnny Gargano, which is laying on a crate. Then CM Punk looks at him and say, "Hey, look what's going on here. What's all this craziness and stuff?" And then Candice LeRae, starts blaming CM Punk, for beating Sammy and everything, and ruining doggone Johnny Gargano's, I guess, comeback, whatever the case may be, and stuff, And then CM Punk, basically tells him, "Hey, look, guys are wasting your time doing what y'all doing right now and stuff. And for them, to get back in the ring, and do what they do best and stuff and stop laying around." And then that was it for that. Then he walks into CM Punk walks into Finn Balor, and Finn Balor says, "Hey, I've been, looking at you and everything like that, looking for you and stuff." And then he welcomes CM Punk to SmackDown while looking at, the undisputed title. And then we get the match with Alexa Bliss and Jade Cargill. The match, it was sloppy. It was actually really not that good. And it was just a match that was thrown together and stuff. Why isn't it Jade Cargill and Charlotte Flair in the match? But Alexa was a sacrificial lamb on this one. She gets jaded by Jade Cargill, and Jade Cargill wins the match. Then Charlotte tries to get into the ring, because B-Fab and Meechin jump on Alexa Bliss and start beating her down. Charlotte gets in and everything, and Charlotte gets beat down and stuff like that. Jade grabs a chair, put Alexa Bliss's arm between the chair, folds it back, and then slams it back, and then it dislocates, you know, um, Alexa Bliss's arm. It looked pretty nasty and stuff. But anyway, then we got Trick Williams and Little Yachty. Trick is looking for his belt and stuff like that. And then Little Yachty, comes and say, "Hey, look, I got it," and stuff like that. So he kind of tricked out the belt, put feathers of fur around the belt and everything. And, so now they have a belt that's tricked out, for Trick Williams and stuff. And then Little Yachty, tells Trick Williams to go out and, handle his business, and take out Carmelo Hayes. He said, "Give him that diamond ass whooping." So, okay. And then then we get the match with Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. The match was actually a pretty damn good match and stuff. They were, Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes got pretty good ring chemistry and stuff. But then out of nowhere comes Baron Corbin. Get Baron Corbin. Nobody's seen Baron Corbin for a little over a year, might be even longer. But he takes out both Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes and stuff, and he stands strong with the furry U.S. title belt in his hand. Then he drops it on Trick Williams, and then he walks off. So this is going to be interesting and stuff. So we're looking at a future champion. I'm sure they're going to put the belt on Baron Corbin before they put that belt on Carmelo Hayes. Watch and see. Somewhere along the line, there's going to be a triple threat with that. What's going on here and stuff. And then we got Gunther. Gunther comes to the ring, and he calls out Nick Aldis to the ring. Nick Aldis comes out to the ring, and then Gunther, told him that, hey, look, you need to fix what's going on as far as with CM Punk and everything, and Sami Zayn losing and stuff like that. And then Nick Aldis tells Gunther he'll have his match at Saturday night, main event, but it'll be against Cody Rhodes and CM Punk, and his partner will be Sami Zayn because Sami Zayn hates Cody and CM Punk too. So we get the tag team match set up, for Saturday night main event, which is later on in April, which is about a week or so away, in July and stuff. And then all of a sudden, Gunther just goes off and he just destroys Nick Aldis. I mean, he destroys Nick Aldis and stuff. He chokes him out, then he comes back, beats him up a little bit, drops them elbows on him and stuff, and then chokes him out again and everything. And then here come the officials coming out to try to break it up and everything. Gunther gets away from them, and then he chokes doggone Nick Aldis out again and everything. I mean, he just put Nick Aldis through the ringer and stuff. So we know there's going to be some repercussions, to follow from that. Let's see what happens and stuff. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I say. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.